Do I want to talk about this Trump shit? I kind of do want to talk about this Trump shit. Okay. So I came across this video here. It's very interesting. It's only 2 minutes. I want to watch it really quick, and I want to give my opinion on it. But basically, in this here, it says, unhinged GOP rep Ken Buck lies and says Google changed 15 million votes from Trump to Biden. To be clear, Google didn't change any votes, let alone 15 million. Republicans have completely lost it. Let's make this viral. Now, it sounds insane, right? Because Google, they can't actually change 15 million votes. But let's watch the video.
By the way, changed its algorithm in May of 2020 to disadvantage Donald Trump and to advantage Joe Biden. Changed its algorithm. And when you ask them about this, and I know people that own newspapers and asked them about it, they say, oh, well, that's just a technical thing. We don't know what the result was. We just know that a technical person did this. Nonsense. They chose the winner. They can move. The estimates are they moved.
So yeah, it seems like they actually did change the algorithm in August of 2020.
15 million votes. Because every time you ask for an article on Donald Trump, or every time you Google Donald Trump, and people here obviously Google in a more sophisticated way, but people out there are hearing about Donald Trump and they're wondering, Donald Trump, Hunter Biden.
I hadn't heard what you said about Google, that they changed the algorithm and penalized President Trump. Can you talk more about that? Like, they flipped 15 million votes to Biden? Like,
well, what I've heard from sort of the academics on this issue is that by changing the algorithm, you can flip 15 million votes. You can influence 15 million people to move one direction or another in that situation.
But that happened.
But it absolutely happened. Absolutely, the algorithm happened. So you talk to people.
Like how he said that happened, the algorithm happened. Like he's like, the algorithm shift happened. Doesn't mean the 15 million happened.
At conservative publications. Mm-hmm. And what they'll tell you is the day after that algorithm went into effect, their readership went down. So if you were looking for something on the Washington Examiner or the Washington Times or the conservative newspapers in this area, you would have to go further down. You have to go to page 2 or 3 to find the story you were looking for, and that's what Google did, was by changing their algorithm. And it absolutely happened. We won't have a congressional investigation on it because the Dems control the House and the Senate. So we can't.
There's nothing you can do about it?
Nothing we can do about it. Well, we can do something when you give us.
How do we win if they can do that every election?
Well, because we will win. The people are so upset with boys playing girls sports and critical race theory and all the other things that are going on that we will win the majority, and we will.
It's actually not necessarily untrue. A lot of people are very against critical race theory. Most people are against critical race theory and biological men playing, trans women playing in men and female and cisgender women, well, in sports. I don't want to say this in a transphobic way because I think it's a bit transphobic to call trans women biological men. But for the context of the conversation, like, yes, it is necessary to talk about. But yes, it's not exactly the most popular idea.
We'll hold hearings on this very issue in 2023, and that happens before the 2024 election.
All right, so here's the thing with what he said. First of all, I like to do two things. We like to apply a little common sense here. I very highly doubt that Donald Trump would have won, regardless of the algorithm shift on Google. Okay, I very highly doubt that they would have won. Okay, or Trump would have won. I really highly doubt it. However, there is something to be said here. It's like, yeah, Google did shift their algorithm, and they're very, very shady, and they don't open up about it. And I really wouldn't doubt if it did have a negative impact on Donald Trump or the way that he's being perceived. Now, we've been perceiving him like shit since the beginning because he's kind of shitty, and part of it is a dog pile from the media. But like, we should be a little afraid. We should be a little bit afraid that like Google has a tremendous impact on public opinion. Like, we don't think about it, but they really do. Google, every time you search something, Google collects your information so that they can advertise better to you. They collect your information, your search information, they sell it to advertisers, and this way, when you Google something, people will know what you want. Like, it's crazy. You ever look at your phone and like you're going through Instagram and like you see targeted ads? All these different social media companies are collecting your information and then they're selling it so that they can target you with things that you would want to have a higher chance of buying. Now, of course, it has a positive impact of like, oh my God, I'm seeing what I actually want, advertisers. But then there's also that negative impact of they have the ability to sway your perception of things. And I think that we grossly downplay how much impact things like Google have on the way that we perceive the world. If you look up a Google search and the first thing comes up is a particular thing, you're most likely going to hit that, right? You're most likely going to hit that, and then that may have an impact on you, especially over a long period of time. So you have to be a little bit hesitant. Now, again, I don't think that it had a drastic, like, Donald Trump was probably not going to win. Okay, and yeah, sometimes people only verbally speak up and they target you with ads. It's crazy. It's crazy as fuck. It really is crazy. But like I think that this idea that he's just out of his mind. I mean, he's being obviously like over exaggerating the number of votes that would have potentially been shifted. It could have been 0 for all we know. But I do think that this is something that like warrants like a little bit of concern. Like, okay, like we should be a little bit apprehensive about like, these search platforms. We need to understand that like at the end of the day, Google didn't give a shit. I very highly doubt Google gave a shit who won the election. I don't think that they cared if it was Trump or Biden. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. What I do know is that there is a lot of social pressure to be politically correct. And that social pressure hits everybody constantly. Right now, there's something going on where, like, apparently there's some like, it's a minority of people, but they're crying out in Spotify because Joe Rogan doesn't support trans women in women's sports. And, like, that could potentially have an impact on Spotify. Because that's what the mainstream narrative is. But, like, realistically, most people don't even support that thing. But we're also busy actually working jobs and putting our energies into things that like matter that we don't really speak up for. But people who are bored, alone, and at home, mostly young kids that are like super leftist and don't really have any life experience, are shouting about all these like terrible fucking bullshit things. And they're not even giving, like, it's just cancel culture. And they're mostly leftist kids. There are like right-wing kids as well. But I'm like, we need to separate leftists people from like progressives, because like I myself really am a progressive. Like, I mean, I'm a supporter of universal basic income and et cetera, et cetera. And like, I feel very disenfranchised by these fucking insane people. Like, they're not, leftists really shouldn't be considered progressives. They're not really trying to make positive progress. They're really just trying to just change things in an unrealistic way. So I think that was something, that was something to note. Now, really quick, somebody's like, Papa, what do you think of what is critical race? Critical race theory is simply really just the study of the way that like your race has an impact on your life in general. The problem I have with critical race theory more than anything else is I don't think we should be teaching kids that. It's a very complicated conversation to have. I don't know that we necessarily have the honest conversation. I don't know how much of critical race theory talks about the way your race impacts you based on where you live. Your race doesn't have as much of an impact in like northern less racist states than they would in like southern more racist states. There's a lot going on with critical race theory. I don't think we have the honest conversation, and I don't think it's something that kids should be learning, because it's very easy for those kids to, while maybe the teacher is teaching it correctly, for them to put some kind of internalized blame in on themselves if they're white, or like, generate a victim complex on themselves if they're black. I mean, or even, create a situation of reduced confidence in black students or white students, but black students specifically, because they may feel like the message is like, I can't succeed because I'm black. These are really very real things. We have to understand the psychology of people. Mental health has been being pushed into the forefront a lot lately, and we have to understand that suggestions to kids that are incorrect can have a profoundly negative impact on their self-esteem and the way that they perform. And so I don't think it's something that's good for kids in K through 12 to learn at all. College makes sense to me. I have no problem with that. But I don't think that it's positive for us to teach critical race theory. Because also, what's the point? I would ask. Oftentimes, like, people will be like, oh, to educate people. But my thing is that I think that we're better off educating people to a point where we get rid of race rather than educate people more on race. I know that sounds interesting or weird, but I haven't heard any like particularly good ideas on how to like remove the oppression from not just Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Indigenous Americans, gay Americans, trans Americans, poor people, poor Americans in general. There's a lot of different ways that you're oppressed, and we're not really talking about the ways to reduce the marginalization of any real group other than like theory and ideology and like what can we do to change the mental perspective. But like, why would you change the mental perspective unless you were trying to push a particular solution? And there doesn't seem to be any solution that's being encouraged at all. My solution is universal basic income. I think that everybody has very specific individual issues that they only know how to deal with. Somebody who grew up in the suburbs of Long Island, I don't know the issue of somebody who grew up in the projects of like fucking fucking Florida. I don't know shit. But what I do know is that they know what's best for them. So if they had money, they can get out of their own issue. That's the great thing about money. It's really the lifeblood of our economy. I think that we learn too much that money means absolutely nothing, which is very weird to me. But it means so much until you hit the point of diminishing returns, which is like $80K a year on average. And so, like, we do need to provide money. It has a substantial reach to help people do whatever they need to climb out of their oppression. And a lot of times, it's going to be to find a gainful employment, which UBI will help people do, especially now that we're losing jobs substantially due to automation. Really, this is just like think of UBI really as like a payout of dividends for a country that's performing so well worldwide. And so this is my whole thing with the universal basic income. It helps people start businesses because they'll have money to start a business. They'll actually be able to get paid from their business. It's going to help them hire workers because they don't have to pay them a livable wage because they're getting a universal basic income. It's great for small businesses. I think it's great for individuals who are in abusive situations for them to move out of their abusive situations. Think about how many LGBTQ people or young people are in abusive situations at home and they hit 18 years old. Boom, all of a sudden they can move and they can leave. We substantially downplay the positive impacts of this and how far-reaching they are. For some people, it can help them. Maybe it's a married couple, regardless of whether they're traditional, heterosexual, homosexual, whatever. Who cares? A couple, or even whatever, throuple if you're poly. I don't care. It can remove a lot of socioeconomic stress off of those people. Maybe they're both working 2 jobs and they can both quit their part-time jobs, stay home, take care of their kid more, be less stressed, have more money. We also have to understand that just money in general raises IQ. If you hit a point of poverty to a point where you're always worrying about how much money you have, your IQ lowers just right off the baseline. How stressed out you are. They did a study on farmers when they're in season and out of season. There are so many different things. I know this sounds terrible, but it would reduce abuse at home, like physical abuse on partners and whatnot, because again, financial stress really does lead to a lot of shitty situations. It would reduce crime. It would have such a profoundly positive impact. Some people would just be able to fucking buy a new car or pay off their car or repair their car. There's so many positive outreachings here. And I don't know how we got from this article about Google influencing the election of Donald Trump to critical race theory and then universal basic income, but I'm not surprised because I'm a big proponent of it. Hey everyone, if you liked that video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to follow my Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, Discord, and TikTok. All links are in the description. Also, check out my Patreon if you'd like to support me even more than you already do. Thank you so much, everyone. I love you all.